now.
Woo!
Yay. Yeah, I'm excited about this
Oh,
one. It was fun. I'm glad that you had a suggestion of combining all of the Wix Velo code stuff, which we'll explain as we go along, with AI, because I still don't actually like know technical details about ChatGPT and the different models and all that kind of stuff, but it is really interesting to me, and I feel like more and more products are incorporating AI into their product. Like every day, I see someone announce like a new feature in their product leveraging AI.
mhm. Yeah, totally. It's all over the place. Like, I don't know, do you
Mm-hmm.
ever check out Product Hunt?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So if you ever go to Product Hunt nowadays, it's
all
like
AI.
19 out of 20. Yeah, it's
Top
only
ones. Yeah.
AI. Yeah.
Yeah. I use an extension called daily.dev. Oh, actually, I just realized I don't have it set up with the new browser. So I'm using the Arc browser. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, sure. I used it for a couple of months, but
Cool.
I defected off of Arc. I was on Arc.
Yeah.
Now I'm off.
Was there
Maybe I'll try
any reason you backed away from it?
again. It was just, I think it was just like I'm always picking up tools and learning so many things, and just it was like it's really cool that you could do all of that stuff, but like at some point I'm like I don't have time to, I don't want to use it if I can't master it.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I already like what I'm used to, I'm better at, and I'd rather put my focus elsewhere, like
Yeah.
learning how to use ChatGPT, the AI APIs rather
Fair
than
enough.
a new browser, because I didn't
Yeah.
really have a problem with my browser. It's
Yeah.
just let's try this cool new
Something
thing.
new to try.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't really, I didn't have an issue with Chrome either. And I haven't found anything that has like made Arc browser a requirement for me. Like I haven't had anything that like drastically changes my workflow, but the things that I do use, I've gotten used to. And so it's like, I think I won't even need to go back to Chrome. Like even if I don't think there's
Hmm.
anything holding me back. I'm not any slower or anything with Arc than Chrome. So I'll probably use it for the time being.
Hmm.
Um, by the way, we had a few people join us on YouTube. Murford, Jared, Bernard, welcome, welcome. I'm curious for people that join, we're going to talk about a few different topics. Do you have any experience with Wix, or I don't know, do you consider Velo like its own product or just like something layered on top of Wix? I don't know what the verbiage there would be.
Hmm. Um, Good question. So I would just give a bit of background if people currently joined the Wix hackathon. Okay, you're right. You look at the
That's
comments.
exciting. Yeah.
I'll look at the
Well, yeah,
camera.
you can pay attention if you want, but I'll definitely pay attention to them.
Uh-huh. Okay, cool. I would say that Velo is like a superpower, like if you're a power user, or I mean, even if, well, first of all, for developers, Wix out of the box before Velo, it's a great way to build a quick website, but developers or people who know their way around, a bit of code might want to have more control, um, and be able to do some cooler stuff, more customization, or just whatever they think about in code. And like it could be very frustrating to not have access to that with the traditional, WYSIWYG,
Mhm.
website editors that are just drag and drop. So Velo kind of really opened that up for developers to go in, and there's a very robust API by Wix, so you can actually target any of your elements. So you like drag them onto the screen with with the online editor, but then you can see what their ID is, let's say, and then interact with them in code. So it kind of
Mhm.
completely changed the game for developers to do cool stuff on Wix, getting the best out of having a drag and drop editor, but also being able to customize it in code. Um, yeah, and I feel like with the AI tools that we're talking about, that really also opens this up for people who are much more junior to code. Just if you kind of have a vision of how you want to customize it, you can pretty much get Velo code out of ChatGPT that you can plug into your Wix site and
Yeah.
get that functionality. So that's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
it is. I think like we'll see this in a second, everyone. I think Velo is like actually a really interesting way for junior developers or like learning developers to kind of learn how JavaScript works, especially with the DOM, like handling click event handlers and things like that. And we'll see this hands on in a second. And I guess we can go back and just kind of introduce like the overall topic here. And by the way, Marat on Twitch, who said they joined the Wix hackathon. If you're comfortable sharing like what your idea is and you're not scared someone's going to take it, I'd love to hear more about it. But the idea here is, I'm going to share my screen to give some context. So a friend of mine online, Chris Kalmar, on Twitter, he shares these. He just makes up these like JavaScript challenges, and it's all these weird, quirky things about JavaScript. So this example is like, let's say you have a number, a variable that has a number, a variable that is a number but as a string, and then what happens if you subtract those things? Like a lot of us have seen like addition, you can do string concatenation with them, but what happens if you subtract? And anyway, so I thought it'd
I
be cool.
definitely know the answer, but I'm not going to give it away.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, if people know the answer to this challenge, leave that in the comments. And if you have explanations for it, do that. But I figured, why not use ChatGPT to not only get us the answers, but also most importantly, to give us explanations. Because that way, like these are tricky things. Like diving into what goes on behind the scenes when this JavaScript gets executed is pretty tricky. So if ChatGPT could not only solve it, but also give us an explanation of why, that's a really cool feature. So we're going to build what is this thing. It looks pretty simple, but let's say we want to put in some JavaScript. So a equals 10, b equals the string 3. Then what happens when we log out a plus b?
Wait, so this is real? This is a real... That's a site? Okay, cool.
Yep. And we'll start completely from scratch and do all this together. So everybody from the UI, from the ChatGPT part, we'll see all this. So questions and comments, leave them in the comment section. But one of the things we'll probably add if we get to it is like a loading indicator. So this will seemingly not really do much for a little while, but it should come in and not only give us the answer, which is the string 103, it will then explain why it's using the plus operator. Because one is a string, the plus operator becomes concatenation instead of addition between a string and the number. So we haven't done the minus, the opposite version of this, which is this. So I'm curious again if people have answers to that. I'll put that in the chat. But this is the demo that we're going to build. For context, really quickly, and then we'll get like to the hands-on portion of this. Do you want to just introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about your background?
Oh, sure. I mean, I assume people are probably most interested in the code, but I am Yitzi, a developer at Wix, been here for 2 years. My background, I spent way too many hours behind a computer screen for about 5-6 years as a full stack dev until I was about to turn into a computer. So then I decided to get into developer advocacy, developer relations, and now I'm here as a developer advocate at Wix, loving it, and I'm really happy about all these, the developer focus and the way Wix is shifting to becoming more of an open platform and providing tools to developers to, instead of having developers feel forced into the platform, a certain straitjacket of a platform, rolling out these tools that are freeing the code for the developer to, interact with it and do with it as they want. So that's exciting for me and what I do here.
Yeah, it's funny. I think it was Wix that had done like a promo thing where they sent headphones to people like a couple years ago to developers in the community. And there was like, it wasn't really on my radar for like, I knew of what the stereotypical Wix was, not quite what Wix is now becoming. And so the more I've learned about the different developer focused tools, the more exciting it is. So I think it's definitely worth a look for developers if you're curious to learn more about what Wix has going on. And if you're ready, we can actually get into the hands-on portion of this.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Cool. So I'm going to go over to Editor X. So while I'm kind of navigating around here, do you want to explain what Editor X is versus like regular Wix?
Okay, so basically, if are you gonna do create new site?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you do create new site, what you get is this option. Okay, there you go. Okay, I'm so grateful that that showed up. Okay, yeah, it always does, but you know, you never know when you're doing something live. Okay, fine.
Mm-hmm.
So over here, you choose what platform you want to use. So Editor X basically is that's what James just chose, and it is kind of more professional. It's less, you know, out of the black box, pick, you know, one from 100 templates, though you still have some level of templates, but you get very fine grain control over design elements and things like that. Like, you know, you can much more customize all kinds of stuff, which I'll see once it loads up, James, you could open up the sidebar.
For
And
elements or
you have that sidebar, which
mm-hmm.
anybody familiar with Wix will recognize from the regular Wix editor. But if you go onto the right, you have like the settings thing over there. So over there, you get really a lot of control over whether you want elements to be static or to pin them, and you know, how do you want to pin them, and all kinds of stuff. You can really like get your website pixel perfect. You might be able to do that, you know, so for professional designers and things like that, they might feel more comfortable with this level of control, which might be overwhelming for other users who would prefer just, you know, give me a template and I'll stick with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So inside of here, like we can start to add just the basic stuff, like the UI that I had a second ago. Not that impressive. But if I added a title on here, I called this like Quicks code solutions or explanations or something, like whatever we want to call this. I'm going to put this as an H1. I'm going to change the font size down to 54. Just kind of basic editing stuff that people are probably used to, but we'll just kind of stub out this UI. And then I'll have a paragraph piece of text that says something like add your JavaScript code snippet below, and I will solve the problem or whatever it is. I will tell you what the output is and explain why, which again, I think is like the most powerful feature with ChatGPT is not only to get a solution, but also to explain why.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty amazing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are just two static text elements. We can now add in here an input. So under where was the input earlier? I feel like these menu items are different now.
Yeah, we switched them on you. It's a test, James. I think if you go to that's if you go up to text.
Text.
No, those are just the static texts, right?
I think there was an input like 20 minutes ago.
Right.
They have like a full form, which is not what I'm looking for, just the actual element for input. Oh, that's why. I forgot the most important part, which is to turn on dev mode. And I didn't turn this on yet because I wasn't getting to the part where we actually write code. So we'll get to that. But let's turn on dev mode and then we'll talk about the specific like code part of this in a minute. Yeah, someone said ask GPT where the input is. That's a great call out.
You could.
That would be good.
You know what I found interesting actually with ChatGPT, you'll get better Wix code if you say Wix code and not Velo, because you know the cutoff date that it was trained up to 2021 or whatever. So if you ask, you know, give me, you know, a method that does this in Wix code, that's the secret.
Okay. But I want to do on just the text box here, make this a little bit bigger, taller, And then for the input, I'm just going to say like console log 10 plus 5, just an example JavaScript snippet. And then we'll want a button, and this will just be a basic button down here. I want to make this go full width. And then we can change the text to say, explain my code. Cool. And what's cool from here, this is where we start to get a little bit into the code. So we have a home JavaScript file already down below us. And this is kind of coming from, if you go into the code brackets icon here, you can see all the different code files that come with Velo. And what's really mind-blowing about this, we won't get like all the way deep into this, is this has the ability to support code that runs on the server and in the browser. So you can have like global JavaScript, you can have JavaScript that runs per page. You can also have JavaScript that runs strictly on the server, which is what we'll see in a second when we incorporate the GPT API. And the reason, for people who like may not have this context already, the reason you have to do that part on the server is because we will reference our API key. So we'll create an API key inside ChatGPT like dashboard, and then we'll use that API inside of the secrets. So in developer tools, there's a secrets manager. So the same way we could have environment variables in a regular like Node.js project in our own code base, we'll be able to do that in here and then reference that thing inside of our code as well.
Yeah, cool. That's one thing I would say is really cool. What I like about this is, kind of not having to deal, like I love trying out all the new APIs as soon as they come out and stuff like that. Like, and it's annoying, all the boilerplate that you have to do all the time. Sometimes like developers like to be purists and like feel like, okay, I'm gonna build this CRUD app, for the 100th time because like, but this is actually really convenient. Like I can't even count how many Wix sites I have, like just to test out like some, new JavaScript thing or whatever. Cause you just like, you get the front end and back end and, all the interactions and everything right in one place. And it's just a really quick way to get up and running and just focus on the code. So
yeah,
I'm a fan.
We can do a quick example of that. So I've got a button here. It gives it an ID by default of like button 1, 2, 3. It just adds them on by default. I'm going to call this submit button. And then you have little buttons inside of here, links inside of here to do all of your handlers. So you see there's code on here for the $. Like you could think of this as similar to what jQuery would give you. Like you'd import jQuery, $, and then you can access your DOM elements and do whatever you wanted with it. So you can think of it as something, there's an on-ready function that you pass a callback function to write things to interact with, and then you can add event handlers. I'll make this a little bit bigger and maybe zoom in. Let me know, people, how the visibility is here. But if I add an event handler, it says what's the name of it. It'll give me a name by default, and I can change this and say handle submit, press enter, and it generates the actual handler for me. And I could go in and write code in here and say submit button clicked. Notice that as I'm doing this, I get the IntelliSense and stuff that we're used to in VS Code. We'll actually move like into VS Code specifically and connect this to a GitHub project and stuff in a little bit. But we get most of the same IntelliSense and auto completion, that sort of stuff right inside of here. And then if we go to the preview, and I'll fix the UI here in a second, but if we bring this down a little bit and click the explain my code and bring up the developer console, I think that still didn't. Can I drag this down and leave it open? Still giving me a selector in here.
You're in, what was that?
It was still in like a select mode for me, I think. There we go. So if I click this, see, we get our handler come out and it actually executes. So what we're going to do is we're going to define a function on the server And then what's cool about this, and we actually, if people have used other like full stack front to back type safety type things, I guess this is not the type safety piece, but what we're going to be able to do is define a function name on the back end and then call that function directly from the front end as if it's just a regular function, even though behind the scenes, I assume it's actually doing like an API endpoint, an API call, et cetera. It's got to be doing something like that, but we just call a function that we had defined on the back end, call that from the front end, and that'll be the thing that actually handles the ChatGPT stuff.
Yeah, it's super cool. It makes the code really like clean and neat, you know.
Yep.
It's kind of it. I think, you know, if you have retrofit or different, there are a couple of libraries that do that. I'm more familiar with the Java that, yeah, but that's like kind of behind the scenes magic. Define your functions in the back end, call them in the front end.
Call them. Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool stuff. Johnny on YouTube, welcome. I'm having fun so far. One of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to place these. Actually, I'm going to add one more element. I'm going to add a paragraph below the button. And this is just going to be, I'm going to edit this text and say results will show here. We'll update that text dynamically with JavaScript here in a minute. But what I'm going to do is take all of these. So just holding down Shift and click to select. Can I get let me see if I can get this one to pull open. All right. So I'm trying to get my results will show here. There we go. Can I just move this up for a second? Cool. And I'm going to select all of these elements, put them inside of a container. And inside of the container, I can make these kind of sit on top of each other. Is that right? Where's the best way to position these? So like basically have like a flex box where they're stacked.
Well, first, maybe you want to expand the container. If you do hit the stretch button in the top right, no, I mean on the canvas over there on the top right of your container, you've got that. Yeah, it just might give you a little bit more room. I don't know, or you could Command Z that. And then when you move the pieces into place, there should be a attach button, I think. Right?
The attach, well, I had, let's see if I can, there we go. This is what I was looking for, the stack. Yeah. This is what I did earlier. And you had said there was another way to do that too. But now that I have them stacked, which is basically just like kind of how we would think is elements in regular HTML, I can start to add my...
we need to pay attention to the Wix whiz because he knows what he's doing. Split the container into several sections.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I guess you want to
make
them rows or columns. When you're in the container, you can, there's like a layout button.
I am going to make all of these kind of full width. So this will be 100 full width. This will be 100% width as well. And then I'll just center all these to make them line up. Cool. And that'll be centered. And this is mostly full width. And then on this container, so on the stack, I can add padding in here. This doesn't go all the way to the end, but it still does what we want. So Daryl is saying, or if you want to use container, setting the grid would give you more control. Yeah, there's, I imagine, I mean, kind of like we talked about beforehand, lots of different ways to do the actual styling piece. But as long as we have these basically stacked on top of each other, that's really what we care about for now.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. So we can now go to the backend part if we want to. And the one thing we will need, actually, let's go ahead and create under the code public and backend section. I'm going to create a web module. This is going to be, I'm just going to name it AI. And then generate this file for us. It gives us an example function. And I'm going to paste in something that you hear with me, and then I'll tweak this. So this was an example that you had done of working with the OpenAPI SDK. And there's a couple things we need to tweak. but you had done where every time the site reloads, it prompts to get a 2-sentence horror story, which I thought was really neat and kind of freaky when you like read some
Yeah.
of them. It was kind of intense, but a cool idea. So 2 things that we need to do off the bat. One is notice that we're trying to require the Open API package. We don't have that installed. And so this is where like the question is, what do we do for NPM packages? And there's obviously a solution for that. So under NPM packages or under packages, you've got stuff from Velo. So Velo has stuff built in for working with databases, for real-time socket connection stuff. And then also you can do install packages from NPM. And I can search for OpenAI and install this. Once that is done, this error will go away. So now it knows that we have the package installed, which is great. And the other thing,
I want to throw something in over here.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to point out that everything that we're doing now with code in the online editor, this was the way to do it until a couple of days ago, until very recently. But now we have the GitHub integration, which will drop a sign up link. And all of this could be done, all the code related stuff, including installing the OpenAI NPM package, can be done however you want, meaning from your terminal. There's a Wix CLI tool. You can open up your Wix site. You get files just like this, which you'll see soon. And you would just do Wix install OpenAI, just like you would do NPM install OpenAI. You would do Wix install OpenAI, and you'd get the same result.
Yep. And once we get this working, we'll go and like export this to an actual GitHub project. We'll pull it down locally, show that we can make changes, push them, and all the things. So we'll be able to see the full integration.
I'm excited about that because, like, you know, it's just very general. Like, this is cool stuff that will, wherever you go from here, whether you go to build a site on Wix or a static site or anything, you don't need to learn Wix specific. Your current knowledge is enough, and you know, just keep developing the way you're developing. So we'll see that.
And I feel like this was actually, so I met Amanda, who's on the DevRel team as well, in London a few months ago, and she was talking about Velo, and that was like one of the first things I asked was, can you write the code locally and integrate with Git and a GitHub repo? And she was like, not yet, but basically like that sort of thing is coming. And I think that's really important for developers, because these tools in here are really good. Like, it has the VS Code IntelliSense. I assume it's built on top of like Monaco, but it's still not quite the same as being in your own code base, like using your own tools and configurations inside of VS Code or whatever editor people use. So we'll get to see that full thing in action in a few minutes. And yeah, question on Twitch, is the session being recorded? Yeah, this will be saved forever on my YouTube channel. So this live stream will live under the live category. You can go back and rewatch and everything later on as you want to.
We're going to take out the part where we both couldn't find the input.
And that was my fault, because I was thinking about developer mode for a different context. And then as soon as I got the right context, we got it figured out. Cool. So one thing I'm going to do is change the casing on this just to be all uppercase. And then notice that we have this like get secret function. So this is part of the Wix secrets backend package, just like another access to and writing code here. And so we want to get the secret key or the secret associated with this key. And so we can do that inside of developer tools. There's a secrets manager. And this is, if people have deployed websites anywhere, basically the same kind of thing that you're used to. So storing secrets, you give it a key. So here's the key that we just looked at. And I think if I go back through my multiple history clipboard far enough, if I'm doing this correctly, I'll have to double check. Hold on. I'm on another monitor, so people can't see what I'm doing. But I have a multiple history clipboard, and I'm going to paste in a previous key for ChatGPT that I created. I hope I'm pasting in the right one. And you shouldn't be able to see this. Hopefully that's the right thing. We will know if it's not.
Well, now we know how
generate.
numbers it is.
Now you know what?
gonna guess it now because we know how many characters it is.
Yes. Not as easy as you may think. Hopefully that's the right thing. If not, we can go generate a new one. I just was trying to avoid generating one on stream. So there's our API key. We can go back to editing our site and start to work with that code. So let's go back to the site. Yeah, Gooseman, just ask ChatGPT to guess its own API key. Surely it would do that for us. There's no doubt about that, right? And I'm going to change your prompt. Let's go back to the code and to not the page code, but the backend code. I'm going to change this prompt. So this is the thing that you're actually telling ChatGPT to do. And what I did before was say, can you tell me what the output is of this JavaScript code and explain why. So there's my question. And then I'm going to change these to backticks and then do a /n to go to a new line. Then I'm going to add in a code variable. And I'm going to have this be an input. So I'm going to take in that JavaScript code. And then I'm going to have this function be explain JavaScript code or something like that, whatever it is. My Spanish and English is no bueno. Eduardo, I'm thinking of the wrong. I responded to Eduardo in on the YouTube chat in Spanish, thinking that it was at least there is at least one Eduardo that tunes in that speaks Spanish. I don't know if maybe I'm getting confused. If so, I apologize. But cool. So anyway,
I go like over here. So there's this discrepancy. There comes the Zamboni. I'm at work and they're waxing the floor. So we'll have a nice floor in the morning. Nice. But as long as you can hear me, that's good. Yep. So this is actually this model, Text DaVinci 03. That's one of the GPT-3 models. So ChatGPT, which is more conversational, is GPT 3.5. So just like in terms of prompts, just for general information, like this I'm sure like is fine and will probably work. But it's kind of like more of a completions mentality. That kind of like what, if I would do my project over, I would write like a much longer pre-prompt. I would kind of defining the professional that we want to ask. Because kind of it's like you're talking to this, average of the entire internet with this ChatGPT. It's the average of all the text on the internet. What's likely to come next, and then by adding in and defining the professional that you want, you're emulating a smarter person. You're getting ChatGPT to emulate something smarter. But this will be perfect once if we switch this. I know Ethan, the Wix Wiz, has done stuff with that with chat, with the new ChatGPT API. I think he's using the Python SDK, and this is the Node SDK. Cool. I'm not sure if the Node SDK supports that yet. But yeah, just wanted to
see these
so
are
the model matters. So pay attention to what you for the model.
And this is where, I don't know a whole lot about it. So I'm like really into this, the idea of it. I have a lot to learn about all the nomenclature and this sort of stuff. Also, a question from Gooseman in here. So talking about environment variables. So we just created an environment variable. He's asking, if we change an existing environment variable, does it get automatically applied to the already deployed code, or is there an extra step? So do we need to click like a republish, I would imagine, to pick up that new environment variable? Do you know?
I think I'm pretty sure, I'll have to double check, but I'm pretty sure that when you confirm when you confirm that you change the variable, right? So that's automatic.
Okay.
Then that's the variable. As long as if you kept the same name and you changed the value, so the code doesn't know it's kind of like, think of it as two separate stuff. It's not tied to a specific site, right? So every site, when it gets up to that run point, when it gets up to that point, is just gonna, you know, try to fetch that
Just go get
environment
that thing.
variable,
Yeah.
and
So
what, you
they're
know, whatever it is. So it's in
Yeah.
that, yeah.
So fetch dynamically, I guess, is what
Yeah.
that
So
would come out to be.
the answer is yeah. If you change it in that one central place in the secrets manager, I don't remember the flow, if it asks you to click, you know, confirm or whatever, edit and then confirm. But once you've confirmed it over there, then any site that references that variable will get the new value at runtime.
Okay. Sweet. So I think this will. Ooh, also I'm going to take this one out. There's in the snippet you shared, you have a console log of the API key, so I'm going to take that one out just in case.
Oh,
Since I
thank
have
you.
people watching
Oh,
now.
actually,
Yeah.
that's your API now.
Yeah, it's mine now. So there's a
Right.
downside.
Right.
So
And that's another good thing about this. When we talk about that with the GitHub integration, right?
mhm,
You can totally share this code on GitHub, right?
yeah,
Somebody else can try that out without
true.
changing anything, and it would work for them. But you're each getting your own account's
Key
secret.
and yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
So everybody with an account is using their own key, but you can share the code, which is also super cool.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So this is the function we've defined on our back end, and what we were kind of saying earlier is now from our front end we can just call this function. So we can import this function, call it, and then pass it the input from the text input that we created. So this would be on our code. We have master page JS, which I think is just kind of like global JavaScript, and then we have JavaScript associated specifically with this page. And so anyway, I want to import something. I'll come back to that. Actually, I could go ahead and paste in the name of that function. So that's the function I want to import. And this is going to come from the back end. I lose my focus. Back end and AI. So I want this to come from that AI file that we just created. I want to import that function. And then when do we want to call this? We want to call this inside of the handle submit. So from here, we could call our explain JavaScript code. It's an async function, so we can await this and mark this function as async, get back a response, and then we could log out that response. That should work. What I want to do now is actually get the input from that element. So if I maybe close the code for a second and look at this input here, I want to get the value of this. I'm going to zoom back out a little bit and notice that this has the ID of text box 1. So I want to change this and name this to like code input, for example. And then anytime I want to work with a DOM element, we talked about kind of the like parallel to jQuery, we can use the $ selector. And I could go through and like do W and open quote and or open parentheses and then quote. But what I've been doing that works really well is just as I type $ and then start typing the thing I'm looking for, it has fuzzy match. So it'll go in and just like take me to exactly what I want. And then I'm going to get the value of that input. So I can assign that to a variable of code. If there is no code, I could just return. So don't do anything if there's no code. Otherwise, I want to make a request to our backend function, again, completely separate, like on the backend, but we can call it just like a function and pass in the code. And then the last thing we want to do is we get rid of code again and come to our text 5 and then come back to our code. We can give this like an ID of result text, for example. And then when we get our response, take the result text and set the text value to be the response that comes back. Let's see, is there an element with ID does not exist? I spelled that right? It even gave me the IntelliSense.
Result text.
I think it was just because I had just renamed it, so I think it was just like catching up in the editor.
Okay. All right. Also,
so
you can. I don't remember your setup, but you may want to start with it hidden, right? If it's just lorem ipsum or
Mm-hmm.
something, before there's any result, you can start with the default value, like
Yep.
in your right column in any element. You could start hidden and then
Mm-hmm.
show it once the async call returns.
Yep. And so for now, I just initialized it with text that said results will show here. But
Right.
absolutely, like all dynamic JavaScript-y things that you would do, you could do
Mm-hmm.
here with regular JavaScript, because it's basically just working with the DOM, and the things that you're used to with vanilla JavaScript you could do in here. So that's a great call out.
Mm-hmm.
I think, is there...
I think in VS Code, by the way, you were showing the IntelliSense. So
Mhm.
if you would be working locally in VS Code, I'm pretty sure that you get those completions also. It syncs, it
Okay,
syncs the types,
cool.
and it knows your environment becomes aware of the UI elements and their IDs. So that's also
Cool.
really cool. Like,
Yeah, sweet.
mhm.
We'll be assuming this works, then we will go there next. So I'm going to type in const A equals 10, const B equals 3, console log A plus B, and send this off. Again, I don't have any like loading indicator. So same thing you were saying about like showing hiding or like swapping out the text for the button or disabling the button. We could do all those things as well. But if we say explain my code, this should be making the request to the backend function that we defined. And I think I did something dumb, so this is my fault. I logged out the string res instead of the actual response, so I apologize. Let's go back and preview this again. And unfortunately, I have to type this again. So const A equals 10, const B equals 3. I don't know if I doubt I need the semicolons, but we'll include them, and then we'll do A plus B semicolon, and let's try it again. Hopefully this will actually show a real result and not just res. So scroll down a little bit again, gives us the answer, and then also explanation. So this
Nice.
is the power of like just these existing models and APIs. And I think this is a real trend in the industry right now, is you're seeing lots of products just built on top
Right.
of the fact that like functionality and knowledge already exists, and just building stuff on top of that in a UI.
This is a product. You could just hit publish.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then you'll get a link, and you can just go and share that on Product Hunt right now. And it's a working product.
Now,
but you might want to set a budget on your OpenAI
yes.
account.
I know. I was just going to say the reason I won't do that right now. And
Right.
someone asked about this in the chat, if I could share the demo. I think it was Dak on Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I won't do that is because I don't want to run through my free tier while I'm trying to work on this demo to show people how cool it is. But absolutely, I did the...
I think if you want to share it for like 10 minutes or while we're doing the stream, I think I'll cover that. I probably regret those words, but I think we can handle it. Or I'll share mine. It's so cheap now, you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm less worried about paying for it, and I'm more worried that I haven't put a credit card down, and if it just like stops responding because I exhaust the free tier, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Someone will write in the chat. All right, cool. Anyway, this is really cool.
Oh, interesting. Mark rightly called out that I have a typo in the code, and it still worked. So I had forgotten this closing parenthesis, and it was still able to interpret that code, which is pretty fun. Gooseman suggests that we could deploy it and have it return hard-coded. It does stuff, which also sounds like a great idea.
Well, not
cool.
bad.
So
we could share the GitHub maybe after. All right.
So I think you already mentioned this earlier. So the GitHub, we put a link to this. Let me see if I can grab another one. The Git integration, which is what we'll go to next. Here's the link. This is in a closed beta. So if people want access to this, they can go to this site, they can request access, and then they can be able to do all the things that we'll do in these next couple of steps, which is create a GitHub repository from the stuff that we have now, pull it down locally, run it locally, and then publish it, and then it gets picked back up by the actual code like in Wix. so they can go there to
I
request.
just want to say, but if anybody has sign up hesitancy, like I've been burned also recently a lot of times by signing up for especially AI things that get announced, you know, and everybody's using them, and then they're like, just sign up, and then you don't hear about it for 4 months. But everybody I know, it should be really quick. You should get accepted, and it's not like it's a very open closed beta, I guess you would say. Kind of. So if you sign up, there should not be a lot of friction. It's a very easy sign up form, and you should get access pretty quickly.
Cool. Love that. Amanda on YouTube, hi Amanda, said you could modify before you share so that folks would have to enter their own API key to use. Oh, interesting. So like to pass their API key to the backend and then use that. That'd be interesting. I realized I was trying out a couple of extensions in VS Code for ChatGPT, and several of them like allow you to use ChatGPT inside of VS Code to kind of do a few different things. And you can add, exactly like she said, like add your own API key. So it's going against your account and not like their global account for everybody to use. Yeah. Great idea. Cool. So if I wanted to start this GitHub integration, over again, I'm on like the kind of the code tab or context, and then over to GitHub integration, connect to GitHub. I have already signed in with GitHub before, so it'll probably kind of skip through this, I think. Did it? Maybe not.
Yeah, so it pops open your browser just to check. If you tab back, it should say that you are authorized. Okay. Yeah, cool. There you go.
And then it'll create this repository for me. Again, this is based on just the default name that it generated for the app. I could rename this to anything. We'll go ahead and click create. And this is basically going to create like all the Wix, like a repo that includes all the code that I've written in here, which is not a whole lot, but all of that code, in addition to kind of config stuff. And we'll see a little bit of that, like just the things that it needs to know about to be able to do this back and forth with the actual like hosted version of the code.
Yeah, kind of to take a snapshot of the UI, because you're still changing the UI in the editor. So you're kind of, code access, you can access through GitHub or clone it locally, and to keep track of which version of the UI is published, there's a config file that tracks that.
Cool, love it. And then the other thing I will do is allow the Velo application, it's like on GitHub. So we allow that to our account to connect to this GitHub repo, which allows it to like basically pull in the latest changes. So as we publish stuff to GitHub project, that'll automatically kind of be picked up by Velo.
I'll just clarify one thing, that when you commit something to the default branch, so it's specifically the default branch, so you could work however you want. If you're a team or whatever, you can have a PR-based development flow. And then whatever is committed, the most recent commit on the default branch is going to be, is what will be synced with the online editor that you're used to. But it's not synced in the sense that it's your live site. There's still a publish step. So you don't need nothing goes live without you explicitly publishing it.
Yep.
So the sync is between the editor and your most recent commit.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great distinction. So the same way we haven't actually published this yet, us syncing this code doesn't publish the code to the deployed website. That's the second additional step. Cool. I'm going to go through, need to do GitHub authentication, awkward pause while I go into Authenticator and grab a code for this.
Well, I'll tell you a good story with the chatbot while you do that. But people should see this, approve that. So basically, I made a chatbot using ChatGPT, not ChatGPT, GPT-3, and I added it to my building WhatsApp group. And the prompt that I told it to be a rude new neighbor. And then people in the building welcomed the chatbot to the building, and it was rude. It said, "Stop messaging me. I'm going to call the cops," whatever. And then I really had a hard time convincing my neighbors that it was a chatbot and not me figured out that it was my account.
Oh, that's great. You gotta be careful with those things.
Yeah.
Also, for anyone watching, Toxic is the best at this on Twitch. So for anybody that's watching on Twitch, there's a command random VS Code theme that Toxic just used, which will actually like really change my VS Code theme. It's kind of fun. There's a little bit of a timeout. So after someone changes the theme, they have to wait 5 minutes before they can do it again. Another person can do it in 30 seconds or 60 seconds or something. So if people want to try out that command, they could do that in the Twitch chat. So this created the GitHub repo for me. I'm going to go ahead and clone this. So I'm going to clone my site 4, and then I'm going to open this up inside of VS Code, and we'll take a look. And just for context, it pops up. So setting up your local environment, there's like basically 2 different or 3 steps here. I ran this earlier. So you Wix CLI. So you run that install and have that install globally on your machine. Then you clone your project and run an npm install. So I haven't run the npm install yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, similar to what we're used to in like regular JavaScript land of working with npm and installing packages. And then the last thing is we have a Wix dev command, which will run a local instance of the editor. So we'll have the code like inside of our actual code, and then we'll be able to see the local editor running as well. Cool.
Yeah. I think that's kind of like best understood when you see it.
Yeah, fair enough. So we can run the Wix dev command in here. And again, I haven't showed you the actual code yet, but...
Wait, you ran install?
Yep.
Yeah,
and this is loading on the wrong version of my browser. So let me get back to here. This is just the issue with me having multiple instances of my browser open while I'm working in StreamYard.
Yeah.
And here is, I'm back in kind of the editor. I can see the code, but the important distinction here is now if I try to type, this is in edit only mode. So after we connect to the GitHub repo, after we like kind of export and start editing code in the GitHub project and have that connected in here, we no longer will edit code right inside of the Wix editor. We do that inside of our code, and we'll see those changes reflected inside of here.
Mm-hmm. And you can, this is also, I would bring attention to the label right next to editor X at the top left, because this looks very much like the online editor, which is, I guess, intentional because it's essentially, it's essentially the same thing.
Should be familiar.
Because the online, but this is the local editor, which is basically the way it works is the code in the local editor is syncs with your local code. So when you hit save, let's say if you change the UI over here and then you hit save, so that would update your local code. And if you change your local code, that will update the code that appears in this editor. Mm-hmm. But so it's it's parallel, and the same thing with the remote.
Mm-hmm.
So and we can local editor matches your local code, and your online editor matches the latest commit on GitHub.
Yep. And just to demo this really quick, I tab over to this tab. Notice it doesn't have that little call out. So this is what is not local. This is the one that is in Wix right now. And so what I'm going to do just for like demo purposes is inside of this handle submit. We can come into our source code in here. Let's make this a little bigger for people. And we have this broken down into JavaScript for the backend and JavaScript on our pages. We can come into home. We can scroll down to that event handler, and I can add a message, hello world from VS Code, whatever. Save that. That will now show in a local editor. So here is that log that we just did. So those are synced locally, but this is not synced inside of the not local version. So the thing that's actually like out there on the Wix domain or the editor X domain, that code has not been propagated yet until we actually push that to our GitHub repo.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
By the
one
way,
thing that
if you like,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry,
You're good.
if you like living dangerously, so this is not best practice, but if you are someone who likes living on the edge, you could ready from your terminal run Wix publish, and
Okay.
and then you get a, well, first you could do Wix preview, right, which will give you a shareable link with a preview of the local state of your site.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And if you do Wix publish, you have the option, you get to choose whether you want to publish the latest commit on the remote or your local working copy.
Okay.
So
cool. And that's similar, I think, with like if I deploy a website to Netlify, for example, from the CLI, I can say deploy, or
right.
I can connect it through my GitHub project, have it be automatically connected. So when I push, it's going to pull that latest code. And that's what we'll see in a second.
Yeah. So essentially, like once after site creation, and eventually you'll probably be able to create a site also from the Wix CLI, which could automate a lot of things, make things really cool. But now as it is, once you create a site online, so you can pretty much do everything locally. I mean, not everything, but there's lots of things you could do without needing to go to any website.
Yeah. Love it. So one of the things I did mention earlier that we don't have is, I want to make this a little bit smaller, get rid of a little bit of this code, is I would like to have, when we click handle submit, I would like to have some sort of loading state. And so you mentioned earlier, we get IntelliSense in here for the W, and then we also get that same IntelliSense for the actual items that we can work with. So I can go to the submit button, and I think it's just like disable, and or is it is that a function? Disable, let's see, is a function that returns void. Cool. So this will disable the button, and then at the end of this, we can do, kind of do the same type of thing. So we can enable this. Again, good IntelliSense in here. And then at the end of this, do the same thing to enable. So basically what I'm doing is doing a little bit of like loading state. So while this thing is waiting for a response, don't allow the button to be clicked on again. That's actually good for me for like spamming the API too, because I don't want people to just like spam it. And the other thing I could do is something similar of grab the submit button and then update the text, or let's see, the value. I forget what it is in here. Is it value? Do you know how to update the text property specifically on the button?
On the submit button,
is it label?
I think directly. Label.
Okay, Wix I think it's label.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, cool. Wix has got it too. Sweet. So I could do that as loading, and then let's see. What did I call this originally? What's the original text that I had? Is explain my code. Cool. So explain my code, and there's obviously like better ways that I could continue to format this stuff, but this should at least give us the basic idea of a loading state inside of like this JavaScript associated with that page. And we should be able to test this. So still on, actually, let's tab over and go to the local editor. So still on the local editor, I can do a preview. Notice that this code has popped up in here, and I'll have to type code again. I can't remember if I copied that to my clipboard or not. I should have, but I did not. Here's a previous snippet I wrote before. But let's say const A equals 10 and const B equals 3, and then console log A minus B. And so hopefully what we're going to see is, did I forget enable? Ooh, good call. Yeah, great call. Forgot to actually call that enable function.
You have, it looks like you don't have GitHub Copilot installed.
I don't. I can tell you why. I can tell you why. It makes me sad, but I record so many tutorial videos. I feel like GitHub Copilot would really make it hard for me to teach. Because if I'm typing, like building a demo, and GitHub Copilot is like, here's all the code you need, it'd be very distracting from a learner's perspective, and it'd be hard to like address line by line what we're doing. But it actually makes me really sad because I would love to use it on a consistent basis. And I've debated just throwing it in anyway and like saying like take the code from GitHub Copilot and then just explain it line by line, or just turn it off when I record. But that's the only reason I don't have it enabled, is specifically for that. So,
and people at GitHub, if you're watching, he will use it for a small fee.
yeah. Feel free to sponsor the channel in that way. I am going to copy this snippet to the clipboard so I don't have to do this again. So what we're hoping to see is basic loading state where this button is going to be disabled. It'll change the text on the button, and then after it finishes, it'll update those and let us interact with it again. Hopefully we'll see that. So loading, disabled, cool. We could update the results we'll show here text as well to say like ... We could also dynamically update that text with JavaScript to say ... dot. You know what I mean? Like cycle through the ellipses. But it looked like that worked, and then we got the same answer in here, and it showed the loading state, which is pretty sweet. So that's it.
Have you seen that button that runs away from you, by the way?
Which one?
That might be a good one. There was something floating around on Twitter where
if you hover on the button, it moves it.
You can't click on the button, but like that was the end of it. It was just a bad UI that the button runs away from your mouse. But like that would be a cool like loading thing. Like don't let click the button.
Just keep moving it around.
Unless it's valid, unless there's valid input or something, and then kind of.
I like it. Okay, so all of this stuff again was just. And to prove this, let's go back to the non-local. Let's look at the code inside of here. Let's look at actually the page code for home. Let's open this up. So none of that logic is here. So inside of our locally running project, I'm going to do a git status. I'm going to add all of the changes. I'm going to say added loading state for button. And GGP is my shortcut to push. So git push. So at some point, I don't know if it's inside of here. I think it is. Like this will automatically, you saw that like it automatically loaded that latest commit from the default branch that you mentioned earlier. And now that code lives in here, and I could preview this. And I think I copied this in appropriately now. Actually, let's switch this to the minus, because this is, I feel like a trickier one. So let's switch this to the minus, and I'll give a second if people haven't actually come up with an answer in their head of what the answer to this is. Take a second. A string minus a number. What do you get?
Put your answer in the comments.
throw your answer in the comments. We should see our loading state. That's great. And I don't think I'm logging this anymore, which is good. Oh, I am logging it. Go away. Oh, well, it'll show anyway. I was gonna not log this so you couldn't see, and then hide the fact that this output was here. But whatever. So I actually didn't know the answer to this right offhand, although it does make sense. So the difference between this and the plus is when we use the plus operator, the plus operator is supported by strings. So it will take the number and convert it to a string and then concatenate those together. The minus operator is not supported by strings. So instead of converting the number to a string, it converts, or it tries to convert the the string to a number, and then perform regular subtraction math. Because specifically the plus operator is not an acceptable operator, or the operator is not an acceptable operator with strings. So it'll try to convert those back to number to match. That makes sense?
Yeah. Why does string get precedence again? Why when there are two options?
So when I think it's based on the supported operators and inputs. So if you have strings can support the plus operator. That's a valid like concatenation. So when using the plus operator, it will take the two, look at the first one as a string, and convert the second one to match it, and then just do concatenation.
Because of the order, like if you switch the order, would it do?
I was kind of wondering about that too. So you're saying like if we did B plus A, plus A.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why it does that. I'm a Java developer, by the way.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure about this. So I am in the fact that the plus operator is supported by strings, which makes sense because that's concatenation. What I'm not sure, to your point, is did we conversion that way because the string came first? So here's the test: is if the string comes second, do we convert the string to a number and do regular addition, or does it still convert to the number to a string and do concatenation? I don't know. So we can try this out.
And GPT-3's answer.
Yeah, we'll have to see about that. And let me know if people have additional context or ideas in the chat. I'm curious about this.
So what did it say? Did you try it?
Still loading. So this is why we have our amazing loading state. So it can indicate that it is still loading versus before we wouldn't have known if it was still loading or not. And hopefully there's not any, this may just take a while. We will see. But nothing has changed so far. And the loading state is still there. The first time I ran the subtraction one, it took a while to get an answer back. So I wouldn't be too surprised if it took a little while to generate this answer. Surprised it's taking that long though.
Yeah, maybe.
But nothing. I don't have any issues or anything in here.
So one thing that I discovered, I'm trying to find it now. So you can actually, from the editor, run a method standalone in the editor.
In editor X, you can call a function
unit, almost like unit test.
Oh, cool.
Let's see.
Let's see about this as well. WixWiz is asking if there's errors in the event or the error log. So this should show errors. I don't know if it would catch the error. I'm not sure what it would do with error handling automatically because I didn't add anything to support it. So I'm not sure. The live site logs can show you. Oh, yeah. Okay. Any backend errors, perhaps? So live site log. That's a good idea, which is also really important to be able to inspect logs for the backend as well. So that's a good call out. So let's try that. Monitor your site's events in real time. I'm assuming that's what you mean, Amanda. Logs, like console log. Yeah, I wonder. I'm definitely skeptical of this considering it's still loading. I'm actually going to refresh and then try it again. I think WixWiz is saying, like, now that I have the log tab open, I have to see if there's a log. Yeah, it won't show past this moment. Fair enough. So we'll let this reload. We'll run that again and see if we get an issue there. Yeah, good call out.
Yeah. So in either editor, if you go to the file, you've got that little play button.
To which file? For running in
either
a specific
editor
function.
If you go to the backend module, the .jsw, so you have like a little play button, and you can run just that method and see what's going on.
Okay. Let's see. So logs is still open. There's the. Can you hear my dog in the background now? Well, now there's one barking, but one was whining. I guess because there's probably. Oh, there it is. Hello from my dogs. Okay. I think there's probably somebody coming to the door. Johnny has an off-the-record question for me. Feel free to do off-the-record questions. I'm all about off-the-record questions. And you mentioned, so in the local editor, if I go over to, can I still get to? So I can't get to the code view if I'm in the local editor.
Right, in the local editor. Yeah, I'm not sure why not. I also have that grayed out right now.
Okay.
But you should be able to open the file. How do you got the file open? Like I have it open from before.
That's what I was wondering, because I don't have. Yeah.
I'm not sure how
So
you would.
here's
You need
this
to
one
publish
loaded.
it first. You might need to
Say what?
publish it. I have a feeling that it might have to do with
Hmm.
needing to publish it first.
Okay.
I'm not positive about that. You've never published the site, right?
I haven't. Yeah, I haven't published.
So
I'm gonna
there
try
was
this again.
something.
So let's do this. And has my loading state. Oh, so it did it. So there must be some sort of built-in precedence, not based on order, but based on like, if we can do it as a string, we'll do it as a string. Otherwise, we'll try to convert it to a number, which probably makes sense because it's much easier to convert something to a string than it is to convert something to a number, because you'll get an error if you try to convert something to a number that's not a number. So that does to me that JavaScript would inherently prefer to convert things to a string instead of converting things to a number as possible. Johnny, great question in the chat. Do I have an overview of my Git shortcut / commands? So I believe this is a plugin. Rats. I'll have to inside. Let me see if I can do this. So inside of Oh My ZSH, I believe it's a plugin that I added there. So if I let's see.
Right, there's a Git aliases plugin.
Yeah. So let's cd into Oh My ZSH. And if I look in the files in here, do I have yeah, let's do code Oh My ZSH. I think that will show. I don't think there's anything private in here either. Maybe not. I have to find out exactly where that is, but I think it's just a plugin that I added. So it's like a Git aliases plugin or something for either ZSH, maybe. Either ZSH or Oh My ZSH on top of ZSH. So one of those two. And that's where all of my GitHub or Git commands come from. Cool. But that actually, I mean, the point of this whole thing was to be able to like write JavaScript in Wix using Velo and have ChatGPT or have OpenAI teach us JavaScript. And I think it just did. So we've accomplished all the things we wanted to in the stream. And Pato was saying, I know, victory. Oh, here, hold on. I have a sound effect. Yeah. They come through for everybody. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Good.
That was good.
Pato saying, I don't think you can access the dev files folder after Wix CLI sync. So if you want to view those files, open them back up, maybe specifically like you have to go back to your actual running code.
Oh, wait, no, but I have them open somehow. So I don't know how that.
Oh, you got yours open?
For some reason, I have it open. Here, I'll show you. I could share my screen.
And then, so while you're doing that, we can kind of look towards wrapping up. If there's anybody have like any questions in the chat or clarifications about features or functionality or anything like that, throw those in the chat. We can answer them in the last couple of minutes. Are you pulling up your screen to show what you have? Oh, you're doing it like in a fancy way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
I'd rather be in that corner. Okay. So
nice.
Yeah. So somehow, I don't know how I have these open, but I have them. But you have it in the remote editor. I think it's just it's probably a temporary thing to not have access locally. But so over here in my local editor or in my remote editor, you've got this play button. Here, let me make sure everybody sees that over there. There's this little blue play button by each method. And if I click that, so it will run and then give me the response over there. So this is from before. I could run that. In my case, it's not really taking any, that function doesn't take an input. And there you go. And that's the response. So it's like a quick way to see, to see what's going on right from here.
And Pato was saying, just make sure to export your function. Otherwise, the play button is not going to show. That makes sense because it has to know like what it's actually gonna run. By the way, the for you to do that like with your background is pretty cool. I was gonna like you could share your entire screen in StreamYard, which is where we're streaming from, but you've got some like set up on your own with your camera integration to add stuff. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, I like that because I never know, everybody uses different platforms and it kind of, can throw me out of whack. So I like just like kind of, it's
yourself.
what do you call it? Containerized. It's containerized. I live in a Docker container and just show up.
Yep. That's awesome. Cool. Well, I think we did all the things.
I need to refresh my API key. So that's good. I would just throw in, I don't know, we didn't really have time for it, but the two things for homework are you could do Wix preview and Wix publish from the terminal.
Yeah. Good point. We mentioned that one earlier. Sweet. Hope people enjoy this. I thought this was a lot of fun. Again, I think Velo specifically is a great way, or like dev mode is a great way for beginners to kind of get their introduction to JavaScript, and they can add like little bits of JavaScript kind of progressively as they learn more, and kind of have a little bit of rail guards inside of here, because it gives you like, click here to add an event handler, and here's the different things that you can work with. And anyway, I think it works really nicely, and especially when you start combining that. I think that's the epitome of websites. Like you just work with an external API, and as long as you can interact with like send data, get data from an external API, you can build almost anything. So anyway, there's another great call out in the chat from Emmy that there's a hackathon going on for another month till, I guess this is what Amanda was referring to as well, till mid-April, if people want to give Velo a try. So this is at wixsas.devpost.com. People can find that and participate there.
Cool.
Awesome. I am going to, if you're watching on Twitch, I'm going to raid people over to Bald Bearded Builder, one of my content creator streamer friends. So if you're on Twitch, I'm going to raid you over there. If you're on YouTube, it'll just end. Yitzi, thanks for joining and helping me walk through this. Thanks everybody for participating and answering questions, asking questions, giving ideas, all that sort of stuff. This was a lot of fun.
Bye.
Sweet. All right. There's this awkward delay with like ending stream, so we've got a few more seconds.
How do we get out?
I have a banner I could. Oh, you could just disappear yourself. Perfect. All right. So on Twitch, people are rating over. On YouTube, we'll go ahead and end it. Thanks, everybody.